Our pattern speaker tonight is John Moore, a tribute to Rose. A tribute to Rose, John Moore.
It was 1974, and I invited Rose Mayfield to be the first woman in my Toastmasters club. Rose was an ardent feminist, and she jumped at the opportunity to plow new ground. Mr. Contest Master, ladies and gentlemen, this evening I will share the surprising impact of that invitation not only upon my life, but also upon the lives of my daughters. Remember, this was 1974. Rose was an engineer. I still remember the title of her first speech. Do you want your daughters to grow up handicapped? Then she shared her story of struggling to be accepted as an engineer, to be accepted as a woman in a traditionally man's field. She told of the loneliness of often being the only woman in her engineering class, and of the crude jokes that college-age men are prone to tell, and sometimes of the hurtful taunts like, "What kind of a woman wants to steal a man's job?" Rose impressed upon me that a woman who chooses a non-traditional career path is going to need a furious support group. And then she closed by asking that fateful question: do you want your daughters to grow up handicapped? And that's when I vowed I would do everything within my power to support my daughters in their career decisions. I got a test quickly. Laura came home from high school and said, "I'm only applying to engineering schools." I said, "That's great, Laura. Then I won't be the only nerd in the family." But now let's find the school that best fits your needs. In due time, Laura graduated from Northwestern University with a degree in civil engineering. We joked that she chose civil engineering so she could be nice to people. In truth, she wanted to build things that would make the world a nicer place to live in. And what has she gotten for it? Well, so far, it is 25 years experience in design and development of the light rail system in Los Angeles. She is recently back from a 2-year assignment in Abu Dhabi. She was director of rails for the planning stage of the light rail system that Abu Dhabi is going to have. Now she's back working in Los Angeles again. She's the vice president of an engineering firm whose credits include the design of the Stan Musial Veterans Memorial Bridge right here in St. Louis. My Laura is a very civil engineer. I got my second test when Sarah came home from high school. She said with almost a little bit of belligerence, "I'm joining the Air Force because I'm going to be a pilot." Wow, that came out of nowhere. But my concern was, how can I help Sarah learn about the challenges of an Air Force career? Surprisingly, the answer came back: Toastmasters. You see, I had a woman Toastmaster friend who was a captain stationed at Scott Air Force Base. It was a natural. I made an appointment. We went to meet, and the captain brought in a young second lieutenant, recent graduate of the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program in only a few months. on active duty. Sarah got all of her questions answered. Like what it was going to be like struggling against the guys in the engineering classes. What it's going to be like out on the drill field where all of these guys are trying to strut their stuff. What it's going to be like when you're on active duty. She got a straight answer from this young second lieutenant. On the way home, Sarah was quiet. And then, suddenly she said, "Pops, do you think it's a good idea for me to take this ROTC scholarship and join the Air Force?" I gave her a straight answer. I said, "Sarah, it all depends upon why you're doing it. If you're doing it because you want to save me a lot of money on tuition, it's a rotten idea. But if you're doing it because that's what you truly want to do, then it's a great idea." 4 years later, Sarah graduated with an industrial engineering degree, gold bars, and a new second lieutenant on active duty in the Air Force. And what did she get? A bad break. She flunked the pilot physical. But the Air Force sent her off to Alaska to do environmental engineering work. She was involved with closing the bases up in Alaska, which were no longer used, and disposing of the hazardous material. Her credits now include spending 2 years working on the North Slope for ConocoPhillips. That's, for those who don't know, that means 14-hour days, 14 days a week, 12-hour days. When I said, "Sarah, can you handle that kind of a schedule, getting away from home?" She says, "It's no big deal, Pops." And then with perfect engineering logic, she said, "And besides, I'll only go to work 12 times a year." Yes, both of my daughters are proud engineers. Both of my daughters are proud, registered professional engineers. And I say that looks really good on my retirement resume. And if you ask them, they will tell you that a significant factor in their career choice and career success has not only been the love of the father, but the unending support of dear old Dad. And for this, I owe a pat on the back to Rose, who sensitized me to the special needs of a woman in a non-traditional career path. And the greatest tribute that I can give Rose is to simply repeat the question that she asked those many years ago. Do you want your daughters to grow up handicapped? I hope your answer is the same as mine. A resounding hell no! I want my daughters to grow up to be all that they can be. Mr. Congressman.
Our first contestant, LORIE KAPLAN. LORIE KAPLAN.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and especially John, and good evening, Contest Master. Thank you so much for that speech. I think why many of us become Toastmasters in the beginning is to learn to speak better ourselves, but as we become part of a club, we realize so many of the other benefits, and one of which is to hear amazing speeches by other members. And you gave us, not only did we get a great speech tonight, get to experience that, but we also got to hear about one of those speeches that impacted your life and probably the lives of many other people because of it. So first of all, one thing that makes a speech really effective is to tie it to your audience, to connect to your audience. And I think absolutely you did. I'm sure there are many parents here, children here who have had somebody inspire them, and you did a great job of giving us a very concrete way that that happened in your life and showing us how a dad could support his daughters into doing something very challenging. I think your tribute to Rose also gave us a very specific way that we might do this for others. So you gave us some concrete examples. Not only did you encourage your daughters yourself, but when they told you what they wanted to do, you said, how can I help them? Giving them role models. You knew that maybe your experience wasn't going to be able to help your daughter or experience the military, but then you found someone who could do that for her and give her some ideas of what challenges is she going to face, what challenges will she come across, and how has someone else handled that. So that she was able to go into this knowing what she was getting into and if she really wanted to take that on. So it was a great example. Then also just as a Toastmaster and giving a speech, you did some great things with nonverbals. So you used some emphasis, used your hands to emphasize points. You used the stage, you moved around a little bit when you got excited. You said, hell no. You gave us some good body language there, so use your voice and your body to show us, to emphasize the points that you had. And even your facial expressions, you had a lot of congruence. So when you were talking about something that was very disappointing or worrisome, the kinds of things that people might say to your daughters, we saw that on your face and we felt that. And when you had excitement about their accomplishments, we saw that as well. The only thing that I might suggest for you to move it up if you were to do the speech again and ramp it up to the next level is to maybe use your space a little bit more. You had a very nice flow of time, kind of chronological time from 1974 then to your next first daughter, second daughter. You could use the space more as part of that storytelling. So overall, I think you used so many of the tricks of the trade of Toastmasters to really make this a beautiful story, and it was a beautiful tribute to Rose, and thank you for that.
Our second contestant this evening, Jessica Heaton. Jessica Heaton.
Thank you, Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters and guests. We have all been treated to such an honor today. Thank you, John, for getting up here and giving that speech, one, so we have an opportunity to compete tonight, but also so that we can all learn from you. You started out your speech taking us all the way back to 1974, I believe, just showing the depth that you have in this organization and the volume of knowledge that you've clearly learned over the years. So I knew right off the bat that we were going to be in for a treat. I connected with you, being one of 3 daughters, and my father, great man, and definitely I know he has the love that you have for your daughters. And so I was excited as you got going in your speech. So you started us out with Rose, the person who had an impact on your life and shaped your daughters into the great women that they clearly are today. You captivated us with that, and so I knew that I was going to be able to enjoy your speech. What I didn't know is how I was going to evaluate it. So I'd like to point out a couple things that I think you did very well. I think you did a lot of things well, but there were 2 areas that I would like to really emphasize on. And the first one is the structure. So you started us out with Rose, how she impacted your life, gave us 2 examples, your 2 daughters, on how they grew because of this impact Rose had on you. And then at the very end, you circled back around with Rose, brought us in, and just how much of a difference that made in your life. So I think that structure is so important to a well-written speech and a well-delivered speech so that the audience can follow your story and finish it up at the end. So I definitely look to use that strategy in my future speeches. The second thing that I think you did an amazing job with was comedic timing. It's something most speakers really struggle with, and I think you included different types of humor into it. You mentioned the civil engineer, made a joke about how she was a civil engineer and polite and, you know, that type of civil. And that was very clever, and I think for someone who's not as funny, you can play on those play on words and you incorporate that into your speeches. And then you also had different just timing with it all. I liked the way you mentioned on your second daughter's, it came out of nowhere, and you looked up, and just your motions and your timing of that phrase was just on point, and so that was excellent. And so I would say the two things that I definitely took out of your speech were your organization of the whole speech, and then lastly, your comedic timing. There are a couple areas that I would encourage you to maybe push to better your speech the next time you deliver it or use in different speeches. And the first area I would say is to use the different parts of the stage a little better. Get all the way over here, connect with the people further in the back maybe a little more. Eye contact, I think you can really dwell on people in the back, so I encourage you to do a little more of that. You did some, and then the second thing I would say is to have a little more vocal variety, be a little louder from time to time. So overall, it was truly a blessing to be able to hear your speech today and learn from you, and I know we will all take this as we go on in our public speaking. Thanks.
Our third contestant this evening, DHANUJA SINGH. DHANUJA SINGH.
Contest master, fellow Toastmasters, and the proud retired father of certified civil engineers who designed this nation, who's redesigning even now as we speak. What I loved about your speech today is your humility in character that translated itself into a perfect example in the speech from the start. You gave the credit to Rose, you gave the credit to Laura, Sarah, but you forgot to give the credit to yourself. But however, I could see that you were the creator, and that set a good segue to this entire speech and gave a meaning to the final question when you asked us, do you want your daughters to grow up handicapped? That was wonderful. That touched my heart, and I'm a woman and I would love an empowerment of that sort, and getting it from the home is really a wonderful thing. The second thing I loved about your speech, John, today is that the way you used your voice at different points in your speech, in your delivery. As I was analyzing your delivery, your voice had intonations. You used your tone when you asked those questions. Do you want your daughter to grow up handicapped? Or, Pops, is it fair for me to do? And you used power of repetition. What do you do? What do you do? And then you also used power when you said, hell no. And then you said, I won't. Then there was confidence. You used voice in the form of different ways to get your message through. And your gestures, she jumped forward to take the opportunity. So those were subtle gestures, but yet impactful. The third thing I loved is the humor. Oh, I'm not going to be the only nerd in the family. My daughter is a civil engineer. Or, oh, is it because you don't want me to pay for your tuitions? You discovered humor from a very normal, everyday conversation. That was wonderfully done. If I may offer you some recommendations, since you had several characters in this big stage here, I thought you could have used the stage to place those characters. Like when you spoke to Laura first, and since you also had dialogues already out there, if you and your daughter were having conversations, that could have helped us see the bond between the father and the daughter. That could have been visually created in our minds. That is just one recommendation to just enhance the emotion in our hearts. The second recommendation that I had for you is when you asked us that important question, I thought if you could have extended it to all those who do not have daughters as well. There are people here who work with women, who they can empower. They have sisters, they have moms, wives, they have different forms of connections with women and how they can extend it further. So that's just the second recommendation. In summary, the humility in character that was shown in the form of an example, your delivery in the form of your voice, and your powerful gestures, along with the slight use of humor, with some work on the use of the stage, and a little more call for actions, more relevant, this speech would further enhance its value. With that, I'd like to congratulate you. Over to you, Contest Master.
fourth contestant tonight, Carla Martin. Carla Martin.
John Moore and Rose. What a thought-provoking, inspirational, motivational, intriguing speech he gave to us. As soon as he opened his mouth, I knew that this man was well-versed and an excellent speaker. Contest master, fellow Toastmasters and guests, thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to get up and speak in front of you. John, as soon as you started talking about Rose, I just knew for sure that you were going to say that that was your wife. You threw the daughters in there, said that she was the one that inspired your daughters, like, it's got to be his wife. And then he told us about Rose and the fact that she was an engineer when women weren't supposed to be engineers. Then the light came on. I could relate to Rose immediately. You see, I was in the same position that Rose was in at one time. When I was getting out of high school, I wanted an education. My parents couldn't afford it, so I went into the military. Women weren't supposed to be in the military in those days. I needed a support group. I found it with my fellow women soldiers. So I could relate to Rose. But then I could also see how John was a lot like my mom. He was inspirational to his daughters. And he explained to us how he was that way. He supported them. He let them make their own decisions. John, the way you told us the story, you drew the audience in. John used the pauses in the right moments. He used his voice inflection. He got our emotions going. We were there, we could see him talking to his daughters. How about when he told us that the youngest one, Sarah, failed her exam? The entire audience went, oh. The only thing I could come up with, John, because you're such a good speaker, was that I would have liked to see you address the people in the back of the room. I know there's a lot of those back row Southern Baptists back there. They need to be talked to also. I would like to have seen you come over and talk to Richard over here. Or maybe even go over this direction. Open yourself up a little more. You were still everything a speaker's supposed to be. You inspired, you motivated, you got us all involved. The only thing I could ask of you, John, is to one day please tell me more about Rose. Because I would have loved to have met this lady and talked to her, and maybe we could have shared stories too. So maybe each one of you can find your own Rose, and one day tell a story too. Thank you, John.
Our fifth contestant tonight, PEBALZ ESLAHI. PEBALZ ESLAHI.
Thank you, Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests, and especially John. I tell you what, Toastmasters brought out the big guns tonight, right? I can tell that John is a very accomplished speaker, a very practiced speaker, and I appreciate and am grateful to be here and to have witnessed your speech today. A tribute to Rose. I love titles of speeches that grab the audience's attention. I knew we were going to have a tribute to Rose. Brilliantly, you connected that in your beginning of your speech, your opening, and then you brought it in at the closing of your speech as well. In the body, we got to learn a little bit about your daughters and how you knew Rose, how that impacted the lives of your daughters. Anyone who knows me knows that if you add a little bit of history and personal interest into your speech, I am happy. I love it. You did so very brilliantly. I also loved very much your use of hand gestures as you spoke. You were very deliberate, very composed, very calm. You used the speaking area brilliantly, walking to the left and to the right with equal time. Sometimes we tend to hang to one side and give one side more attention than the other. You did that very brilliantly. I do have a couple of recommendations. I would have liked to see a little bit of color added to the speech, vibrancy in words. I found myself yearning to know, what did Rose look like? What were his daughter's expressions when they came to him with these grand ideas of what they wanted to do? I'd also say you did great with your eye contact in a speech. Sometimes it does help to rest on a face, give yourself a moment, allow a thought to finish before you move on to the next. Again, an extremely accomplished speaker. I thank you most today for teaching us and sharing with us and reminding us how important our contact is with other people. The impact that we are having on everyone in our lives, whether we recognize it or not. Hopefully you got the opportunity to tell Ms. Rose the impact that she had on your life and your daughters. Thank you again, John. Thank you.
Third place, District 8, Evaluation Contest, Jessica Heaton. That way you didn't need to camera with me. Second place winner, District 8 Evaluation Contest, PEBALZ, ESLAHI. Gotta love them Kodak moments. Any other announcements? Okay. Drum roll, please. First place, District 8 Evaluation Contest, DHANUJA SINGH. DHANUJA SINGH. I got it right all night and I messed up.